Welcome to the Social Engineer Podcast, the Security Awareness Series, episode 174. 174. We're crawling up there, Ryan. It's really true. It's happening.
Crazy.
I'm Chris Hadnagy, CEO and founder of social-engineer.llc. Not .llc. Where did that come from? I think it's a comma. Either way, you can try that URL, see what happens. And also the InnocentLivesFoundation.org, right? I'm just putting dots after everything now. And I've been hosting this podcast since 2009 when Ryan was just an embryo. Anyhow, I'm joined by my good buddy, Ryan MacDougall. Ryan, good to have you here with me.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so I'm the Chief Operating Officer at social-engineer.llc, and I'm also the lead open source intelligence trainer for SECOM, having taught for many private and public classes. I've been in the IT field for almost 24 years, with 9 focused on the adversary simulation and security awareness. So it's good to be here.
Thanks, Ryan. As always, this episode is sponsored by social-engineer.llc. You can find us out on social-engineer.com. I really want you to check it out. I'd love your input. We just launched a brand new website. I am so excited about this. Yeah. Our sales guru, Jason, has come in. And I'm sure many of you felt this. He looked at our site and he puked a little in his mouth. And then he said, we need to fix this horrific mess you call a website. And he went on a mission to make it something that we can be proud of. And it is beautiful. I mean, answers questions right away, directs you where you need to be. And if you're just wondering, what is it that Social Engineer does? We focus on the human side of security, phishing, vishing, smishing, impersonation, and everything in between, helping your company learn how you can be secure and not fall for malicious attacks from real adversaries while we produce adversarial simulations to help you stay secure from those things. So check it out, and I'll be happy to have your input on what you think of the new site. Okay, a couple quick announcements. Social engineering is something you love. Check out our Slack channel. You can find it in the show notes down below, or you can find it on the Human Hacker Twitter account. There's I think they call them like a sticky something, sticks. Maybe we'll just call it that. And and you can check it out. And there's a link to the Slack channel. If you have a problem finding it, just tweet at me and I'll send it to you personally. No big deal. We have over 1,100 people in there every day talking about different things. We've had 8 people now find jobs in the InfoSec industry. We have people talking about pretexting, psychology, phishing, vishing, getting help with all sorts of things involving social engineering. So come on and have a chat with us. It's a family-friendly room, so we invite everybody, no matter where you are on Earth, to come in and have talks with us about social engineering. Also, if you're looking for any kind of specialized courses that immerses you in the world of social engineering, you should check out the APSE, or Advanced Practical Social Engineering course. We actually have one coming up in August, 2 through 5 here in Orlando. I'm going to do it just for Shane, Florida, because it's the best way to say it. Orlando, Florida. Seats are filling up fast. That is true. We are going to limit this class. I can't do over 20. Otherwise, it really stinks for everyone that comes. So I believe we're about half full now. So you want to check out the link in the show notes. Come on over to the site and you can join us. We're back with live training. We have a lot of new things in that class. So come out and check it out. Huge shout out for Clutch. If you haven't heard, I'm a huge fan. So is Ryan. So is Shane. Much. But if you haven't heard of Clutch, you really should probably get out from under that rock that you've been under for 30 years because they've been rocking and rolling for that long. Brand new song out. You want to check it out. It's all about the COVID-19 rumors and weird things that are going on with guitar pedals. I won't tell you anymore. You should go watch the video. Philip K. Dick inspired, so definitely check that out. But Neil, who's the lead singer of that, is on the board of the Innocent Lives Foundation. So we've loved them. I've loved them since I was 17. We loved them way before then. We love them more now because of their support. So check out Clutch at pro-rock.com and also check out the Innocent Lives Foundation at innocentlivesfoundation.org. The work we're doing there, I am just so proud of my team. We are over 600 cases now, which that number kind of blows my mind because 5 years ago when this all started, I thought, we're going to do 5 or 6 cases a year. I'll be super proud of that. It will be amazing to help law enforcement catch these guys. Never thought there'd be 6 full-time employees, a team of 50 people working day and night on these things. So check out innocentlivesfoundation.org. And actually, you'll have a lot more info about that today as I introduce our really special guest that will be joining us here on this podcast. So help me in welcoming Shane McCombs. Shane leads the ILF because of 25 years of experience in the tech industry. Actually, I got a crazy story about Shane. I met him as a client for Social Engineer. We became friends. I actually was looking to find a COO for this, and knowing Shane's experience and all of the things he's done, I said, hey, will you help me write a good job description? So he came up, him and his wife stayed with me for a weekend. We sat down literally with whiskey, Firefly, and paper, and we wrote an amazing job description for the perfect COO for ILF. At the end of that weekend, Shane says, can I take the job? And I'm like, you really want to come work for this organization, really? And we'll talk about how that all turned out. Obviously, you know the end of the story, but Shane has a ton of experience in project management, C-level roles, enterprise-wide initiatives, customer relationship management, acquisitions, policies, procedures, the list goes on. And all of those things are benefiting ILF right now. In the past, he's volunteered for the Autism Hope Alliance, which is another nonprofit where he donates time to businesses as a trusted advisor for that nonprofit too. So Shane, it's awesome to have you here with us today.
Thank you. It is awesome to be here today. This is going to be a lot of fun.
It is. So first of all, let's just start off. InfoSec industry, that list is quite long, 25 years. What got you started off in security?
Well, what got me started in security, frankly, was I had an employee who turned into a bad actor, and I needed to get my previously most trusted employee removed from the organization cleanly and safely. And this was, at that point in time, that was completely out of my wheelhouse. So I called someone that I knew that was in the area, but not far enough away that that it could get rumored back to them. And it turns out it was your brother, Chris. And so I'm asking him for some recommendations of people local. He gave me a couple, and he said, by the way, my brother does this, but he's not local. Would you be interested in letting him take a look? And I said, sure. If that's your recommendation, absolutely. So about a half an hour later, he gave me a call back, and he said that you would be willing to take a look. And in the meantime, I had looked you up, and I was like, okay, there's no way this guy is going to come down and work with my little company and help solve this problem. And you did. And so that was literally where my beginning in the security end of this all really got started.
You know, I didn't know that part of the story. I mean, I know the part where I came and worked with you guys and stuff, but I didn't know that was the beginning of it all. That's crazy. I just learned something new right here on the podcast.
There you go.
Sorry, that's great, man. Yeah. That's really great. Well, you know how it is. It's like you trusted my brother. I trusted my brother. So we both had one trusted person saying, you guys should meet. And then it was, I guess we can do this kind of thing. That's an interesting case. It did. And that's an interesting case because insider threat is basically like learning security while, like learning how to put out a fire while you're on fire.
Right.
That is like not analogy. A great time. You know, it's not a great time to learn how to put out the fire. Not the best case scenario. But wow, that's kind of amazing. So I remember that case. So without giving all the details away, we end it. We do get that guy out of your life. We end up making sure that the company you were working with at the point had no major damage. And then how did that instance then make you say, man, I think I want to do more in the security industry?
So once I began to understand as a C-level what the exposure was, because we just always, 30 years ago in this business, you had to do everything. You had to be able to fix the printer. You had to be able to change, the toner. It didn't matter what it was, plug in the toaster. If it was plugged into a wall, somehow you in IT became responsible for it, right? And so there's all these different things that are bouncing around everywhere. And I had the fundamentals of, I had the minimum things done. I think a lot of companies found themselves in that position years ago. And so we had the fundamentals there, but when it really came to finessing someone out and being sure that they couldn't get back in, that was just way in over my head. So went through this, walk through the fire situation with this person. You guys came down, pulled us out, helped us get set up and organized. And then I went to my very first conference. And guess which one it was? It was it
Was it
was
Derby?
DerbyCon.
A Derby,
And
really? I didn't know that was your
it was
first.
my first. And I
Wow.
walked into DerbyCon and I was like, these are my people. This is where I have needed to be this whole time.
That tells a lot about you. I'm not sure if it's
You
good,
know?
but it tells a lot about you. Okay.
But I immediately just fell in love with the whole security industry, the thinking, the craziness of it, the ability to think outside of the box and then solve problems and make it work in the real world. These were just things I loved, and from that point, I was hooked, and I was in.
Mm-hmm. So let's jump forward then. A few years, because you stayed there at that company, and then I remember calling you and saying, Shane, we had developed a friendship by then. By then, we had, we stopped working together, but we were just became friends, and because of Derby and everything, and I got to meet your kids and, Closet Girl, your wife.
Yep.
That's a funny story. We could talk about that. And then I'm like, hey, man, I need some help writing this perfect job description. So you bring up multiple bottles of Rabbit Hole.
Yeah.
And I load up all the Firefly. And you introduced that's a great bourbon, by the way. And we start sitting down and writing this because the security is my thing. But, man, I had no clue how to write a good job description for somebody that was basically going to do all the things you did at Enzymedica, right? So we're writing this job description, and at the end of it, you say, I want to throw my hat in the ring.
That's exactly what I said, yeah. Can I throw my hat in the ring for this job?
And I remember because the issue was, by then I'm your friend.
Right.
So I couldn't make that decision. So it was, look, I will tell the board you want to be interviewed, but I will have to step out of the interviews. Mm-hmm. Because I am way too biased, because I would say yes right now and not even interview people, right? So we interview 6 people who have amazing experience at fundraising and other things, which wasn't your strength, but you had strength in leading teams and process and policy. Now, I'm not asking this about you, because I know, as humble as you are, you'll hate bragging, but why do you think that was more important to a board of directors, looking for someone who can lead a group? And we're going to get into the security parts of this, but someone who had more experience in the people management, the process management, the policy management over fundraising for a nonprofit.
Because a nonprofit is a business. You have to do all the things. You've got all the moving parts of any other business with the additional layers of the requirements of the nonprofit. And so the extra stuff that's laid on top of it. So you need someone who can actually run the business as a business, and it just so happens it is a nonprofit. And I think what they really were looking for was someone to come in, hand off the reins, and be able to build the business and let it build up and grow. And that just so happened to be that was something that was in my wheelhouse, and I was just thrilled to have the opportunity to give it a shot.
You remember me calling you and saying, Shane, I don't think it's happening, man.
So here's the rest of the story, right? Because you tell them, yeah, I want Shane, and they basically turn around and say, you cannot hire your friend.
Right.
It has to be done. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Chris, they're absolutely right. If the Innocent Lives Foundation is going to be a real thing, we have to do this correctly from the beginning, and you need the best person you can find for that position. If that's not me, that's not me. And so I think the number was 163 was where they started, and they whittled it down to the top 10.
Yeah.
And at that point, you said, I'm out of here. And they basically said, Chris, you can't comment anymore, and whatever happens, happens. And so they got it down to 6, and somehow I was still in there. And I called you. I'm sitting over on the lake having a whiskey, actually. And I call you up, and I'm like, so I said, somehow I've made it to the top 6. What do you think my odds are? And you're trying to be all positive, and everything. And I'm like, oh no, there's no way this is happening. It's just not going to make sense, because there were a lot of people who had tons of fundraising experience, but they had little business management experience and leadership experience. And went through the final interviews, and here we are.
Which is just, to me, is amazing, right? Because that tells me, and I know I'm biased because I work with the board, but just how intelligent they were in making that decision to look for someone who can help grow the business. Because once we grow, we can find fundraisers. I mean, we have an amazing events manager now in John Mitchell. He does things that are so out of the box. He finds opportunities that are so things I would have never in a million years thought about. And he does an amazing job at it.
I mean, who would have thought, Chris, that just a couple of weeks ago that we would have been up in Louisville, Kentucky, picking our very own barrel of Old Forester bourbon to put the Innocent Lives Foundation name on it? I had never in my wildest dream. I mean, that's been a bucket list thing that I've always wanted to do. But I never thought this is something we would have a fundraiser with. So
no, I mean, that's not something I'd even ever thought I'd get a chance to do in my life.
Yeah.
You know, let alone do it for a nonprofit that we work with. That's just amazing.
Well, and that's the whole thing. You just don't get to hold your hand up and go, I want to do a barrel pick. You actually have to get invited and selected, and there's lines for years to be able to get in on that. And
then to have Mr. Campbell Brown choose the three barrels for us.
Yeah.
That to me was just amazing.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for it to come out because we got something really unique.
It's wonderful. It is absolutely wonderful.
It's amazing.
And there's only going to be about 180 bottles.
I'm going to have to wait.
You're going to have to.
I'm going to have to wait till one of our on-site jobs to taste one of those, huh, Chris?
No, you can. You have to buy one at the auction.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Well, actually, this one isn't getting auctioned. This one is.
That's right.
This one is going to come in somewhere between $200 and $250 a bottle, we think, and it's just going to be a straight sale. And by the way, you cannot find this particular bottle for that price. I mean, that's the gray market price, and that's a low price for it. So we're not even adding the additional, nonprofit like tax where you double or triple the price on anything. It's actually a legitimate price. So we're also very happy with that.
This is the only barrel of this particular blend forever. There'll only be 180 bottles on Earth. That's a pretty low price.
Yeah.
Wow. But anyway, that's not what we're supposed to be talking about.
No, it's
not. I mean, don't get us talking about whiskey, okay, Shane? Because that can literally end this whole podcast. We'll never stop.
We'll make it never end.
It'll make it never end. That's exactly what
we'll be here 3 hours later. Remember that one bottle you brought up to my house? But let's talk about security. Okay. So because I wanted to establish like your path into this industry. Because now, here we are. You're working with a nonprofit that really is, I mean, we're not focused on security per se. We're focused on saving kids from the horrors of child abuse. We're focused on stopping people who will prey on kids and create child sex abuse material. So in that, not only do we have to focus on, you have to focus on security for our team, but you also have to focus on things like security for kids, security for parents who come to us nonstop asking for help. How do I monitor? How do I do this? So let's start with that one. Cybersecurity for kids and parents. What do you think both kids and parents need to know when it comes to security in relation to what we're talking about with the ILF?
Well, I think that, I thought I knew about this topic when I said, can I toss my hat in the ring? And yet now doing this day in and day out, there are things that, I had a reasonable idea, but there were things that go on out there I couldn't even imagine or wrap my mind around, at that time. And so when you look back at that, and I was in the IT industry for a long time, so I was fairly up to speed. Yet you take all these parents, we have an entire generation of parents out there whose children are digital natives. They've grown up with a phone in their hand or whatever, and the poor parents and grandparents, they've had to figure this out as they go. And so the simple reality is that we've got an entire generation of adults who are caregivers who they don't know what they don't know when it comes to keeping their kids safe. And it'll probably be another 30 years before, that group of kids who are now digital natives become adults and parents themselves until they can really take great care of their own children in this space. So it all starts with education. As a caregiver, as an adult, as a grandparent, you must educate yourself. And that really starts with just knowing some of the fundamental facts.
Okay, but let's stop there for a second, because I'm imagining here I'm a grandparent sitting here listening to this podcast, right? I don't know much about technology, man. My 4-year-old can, whip a phone out and figure it out how to do all sorts of things in 3 seconds. And I look at my phone, sometimes forget even how to unlock it when my face doesn't work. Right. And now, and that happens all the time. My face doesn't work a lot. Okay. And now you're saying I need to educate myself? How do I do that?
Well, first of all, and this is my opinion, I am of the opinion that you, as that grandparent, you are never going to outpace that child. That child is always going to outpace you on technology. It's just the way it is. Because for us as adults, we have to minor in a major thing. So keeping your kids safe and technology is a major thing. Yeah, we've got all these other responsibilities that we have to deal with. So that means we end up minoring in that major thing. When a child right now is wrapped up with a phone or a tablet, that's their world. I mean, that's the way they're communicating, and they are now majoring in a major thing in their life. You're never going to outpace them. That's just my opinion on that. So my first thing is, don't get overly concerned about the technology itself. So stay really, really focused on your communication with your kids, because there are ways to work this to where you can have your kids training and helping you while having age-appropriate conversations. So you really need to be able to know enough, have an age-appropriate conversation, have your child help you and educate you into the things that they're interested in. Then you need to be able to run out and just focus on the few things your children are interested in and how to protect them. And that's a really nice formula.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that kind of sounds like you're social engineering your kids to teach you how to keep them safe, right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. You can call it social engineering. You can also call it really good communication. Take your pick.
I like social.
Both of those are in the same boat.
They are.
Social engineering is really good communication, just with a purpose, right?
With a purpose. And in this case, your purpose cannot be more important. It's giving them the tools they need to navigate in the world they're having to grow up in.
What do you so you use this phrase a few times, age-appropriate conversation. If I'm new to this, or let's say I was raised in a household where we didn't talk about these things.
Yeah.
These things were not conversation from my parents. Even the topic of sex or anything would have been considered dirty or not something we should talk about. If I was raised in a family like that, how do I know what age-appropriate conversation looks like? Is there some guidelines for me somewhere?
Well, I'm right there with you, by the way. That is exactly the same situation I was brought up in. And so I'm going to give you an illustration that may answer that. I can remember when I think it was John Mitchell, but he was 3-ish, and he would come and he would bring me this drawing, and he was just so blown away by this drawing. Daddy, look what I did, blah, blah, blah. Don't you love it? And I'd be like, I had no idea what this thing is. So the first couple of times, I just tanked. Oh yeah, that is a fantastic giraffe. Are you kidding me, Dad? It's a tractor. Okay, sorry. So nice. So the key that I finally figured out was, I love that. Tell me more about it. Open-ended question. And so you can use that same principle with your kids. Hey, tell me about this in school. How are kids doing with this? The other thing I find as adults, we tend to want to over-explain things, right? So an explanation for a 3-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 13-year-old are completely different explanations. And it's just like when you're giving a public speech or you're talking to someone face to face, if you see them starting to glaze over, you've gone too deep. And so a simple explanation of a simple answer for their question, or, hey, tell me what the kids in school think about this. Now all of a sudden it's not about them. It's about the other kids in school. And then you can say, well, how do you feel about that? And now you can maybe start to dig into what they're thinking or what's in their heart. And that really allows you to make a deep connection with your kids at any age.
That's wonderful. That's really good advice, and you think your analogy makes a lot of sense. So thanks for that. That's really good. Okay, so this is coming out in the next month or so. We're entering summer.
Yeah,
summer's a time. I mean, especially we just got through pandemic, and coming out the other side. Not even that we're through it, but now summertime is that time where there's no school. So kids are free, running around the neighborhood, on the internet more, doing all sorts of stuff. What do you think are the biggest things that parents need to be aware of right now entering these summer months with kids?
I think right now, entering the summer months, there's going to be, as you just mentioned, even more access for the kids to have access to the internet. And as a parent, what you may not have thought about is that also gives the predators more access to your kids. See, that flows both ways. And so I was just reading and reviewing one of the latest NCMEC articles, and they're talking about online enticement. So online enticement is where you have an adult who's talking to someone they believe is a child, and they're trying to steer that conversation into some sort of sexual nature. Now, they're not going to come right out and just ask for a sexual favor from your child, rarely. But they're going to develop that relationship, and then they're going to slowly bring it around and to where they're going to get what they're after. The sad news about online enticement is, I'm just going to read it so I'm sure that I have it correct. In 2019, there were 19,174, so 19.1 thousand cases of online enticement reported. From 2019 to 2020, it jumped to 37.8 thousand.
Whoa.
It's a 97.5 increase.
Whoa.
So that was a year. And that was a lot of kids were locked down in COVID, so we're kind of duplicating that same thing when they get out of school again. So as a parent, we know that this is just going to grow. It's going to continue to grow until some way we're able to get a handle on it. So you are the front line. And so just starting out with being aware that these things happen, having that open communication with your kids, and then just, talk to them, ask them questions, have them show you how they're doing things.
So when we think about some of those statistics, like that's the first I've heard this one. So that's shocking even for me. Almost 100% increase.
It just came out, I think, a couple of weeks ago. So
that's just mind numbing. I knew it had to be big.
Yeah.
Considering what we're seeing at ILF, I didn't think it would double.
Yeah.
Like in 1 year.
Yeah.
That's astounding in a terrible way.
It's a horrific.
And that's just the predators trying to start an interaction with these children. That's what you're talking about with those enticements.
Yes.
That's just the initial conversation that they're happening.
These are the initial conversations where they're starting to work their way in. They're trying to worm their way into your child's life and begin that separation process for the grooming. Yeah.
And that's just the ones that are reported.
Those are just the ones that are reported.
Yeah. So not even the ones that are left unreported. And we know many of those go. So I'm a parent. Maybe I'm non-technical. I hear this podcast. What I want to do is take every electronic device in the house and chuck it into the pool. That's what I want to do, right? I want to take every computer, phone, iPad, and I want to use them as target practice. Now, probably not the right answer.
No.
What do we tell parents that may hear a statistic like that? It's an option. A parent hearing this and is like, "Dear God, I don't know what to do." What do we tell them?
So I'll tell you exactly what I tell them. Our good buddy, Robin Dreek, who is also on the board of directors for the Innocent Lives Foundation. I'm going to read his previous title because I always mess it up. He is retired from the FBI. He's a special agent and chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program. How's that for a mouthful?
That's a mouthful.
The short answer,
business card.
that would be a huge business card. The short answer is he used to flip spies. So you take one of the most untrusting environments you could ever possibly be in and choose to work in that and then be successful in it. Robin knows a thing or two about trust. He retired doing that very thing. And so he put together something called the trust framework. And this is what I always teach and that I always recommend. And trust is a talk. The T in trust stands for talk. And as a parent, understand that if you are not willing to start having these open conversations with your kids, someone else is going to. And the stat that we just gave is a perfect example of that. Kids need your time, they need quality conversation, and they need quantity. So, and that's just let them know you're listening and you're available is really one of the most basic things. I've had a few people say, well, how do you even do that? How do you start that process?
Yeah.
You can start it with little things. Can you have one meal with your family every day where no one at the table is allowed to have their devices at the table, where you're literally forced to put them away? A few years ago, when our kids were still living here, we would go out to dinner with everyone at a restaurant, and we'd tell everybody, pile your devices in the middle of the table. And at first, they would look at us like, what's going on here? And it would force us to just have good conversation. And, if they picked up their device to do something that was a non-emergency, they had to pay for part of their dinner or all of it. And if they got really bad, sometimes hours. So, these are things you can gamify it and you can have fun with it. But can you just spend a little quality time with your kids with those conversations?
I love it. So it sounds like a lot of your answers start with communication, conversation.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, it seems like when I'm listening to you and we're talking about keeping your family secure, I haven't heard you mention a tech tool to install on your network. I haven't heard you mention monitoring devices. I haven't heard you mention GPS tracking or shock collars or anything like that. I haven't heard you mention any technological advances. It's been mostly talk to your kids, communicate with them, sit with them, spend time with them. Can that really work in keeping your family secure?
Yeah, it does. And so it's TRUST. The R in this is about relationship. And at the very first thing you hear this, you may think, well, yeah, I've already got a great relationship with my kids. But the R is not about the relationship with your kids, because if you're doing the first part of the T, you've already built that by default. So the relationships in the trust framework you want to worry about is, who are your children's friends? Who are the people that are having an effect in their life? Who are their influencers? Who's influencing their belief systems? Yeah. Those are the relationships you want to be really be paying attention to. Another staggering statistic out there is that 93% of this abuse that happens to children comes from friends and family. See, were you raised on stranger danger?
Yeah.
Right? That's 7% of the pie, stranger danger. We were always told to worry about the guy in the white van coming up. It's not the guy.
Always.
Yeah. 93% are friends, family, acquaintances. So, as a parent, understanding those external relationships, those people who are influencing your children, and by the way, realize that as a parent, you can be groomed also, because they're looking to get close to you to have access to their kids. So again, it's not a technology thing at this point, right? Not yet.
Yeah, that's amazing. I like it. I just, every time I talk about this, I know that there's parents out there who gets like, I think it's indicative of human behavior. They want the blinky box that they can install in their family network that magically stops predators. And the blinky box is sitting down and having a conversation.
It's taking technology out of the mix is what's going to help them more than anything else.
Right.
That's an interesting, literally removing tech instead of adding more tech.
Yeah, but not removing it in the way you were talking about earlier about ripping it out of their hands and using it for target practice, right?
Yeah.
But enabling your child to use it in a safe manner and setting up that environment where they can thrive. That's really where the security for your family comes in. Yeah. Now, there is a place for it, right? There is a place for monitoring. You can monitor the device itself. You can monitor your home network. Usually, I've noticed that people tend to want to do one or the other. But the reality is, if you want a secure approach, you need a hybrid type situation. You could have your home network locked down with the greatest blinky boxes in the world. And as soon as they step out of your home network, what happens? Right. They're wide open again. So from a technical perspective, there's a lot of opportunity there. I always recommend you start with the things that come for free, see what needs they fill, see if they fill the needs for your child, and then expand on out to other options. You can go to the ILF website, and we've actually got an article out there about monitoring and technology. But one strong bit of advice, this is purely my opinion, I feel that if you roll out monitoring without talking to your kids first and letting them know it's there, it's a huge mistake. Because the moment they find out you've done it, you just destroyed the trust and you destroyed the communication if you've kept it from them. If you let them know, maybe even set up a contract. Hey, these are the rules about how we're going to handle our devices in the house. And you have a contract that you sign, the parents go by it too, the kids know their devices are getting turned off at a certain time. And not just the rules, but be sure they also understand if they choose to break the rules, and they will, because what did we do when we were kids? Yeah, we broke every rule we could. When they do it, you have to have the backbone to hold up to your end of the contract and do what you said you were going to do. Take the device away or whatever that was you came up with.
These fundamentals are useful in general business information security. Like, I'm hearing you say this stuff, and all I'm thinking of is people need to do this to their business networks too. This isn't just a family thing, but it's amazing how these fundamentals can bridge that gap very easily between your family and your business.
We're talking about principles, right? The principles apply no matter what the widget. Just so happens the widget we're talking about today are our kids, right? The other thing to keep in mind is that the monitoring that you put on Sally may not be the same monitoring that would be effective for Billy, depending on who they are as a person, their personality, their ages. So it literally is, the monitoring becomes a custom tweak to each person that you're trying to protect.
I actually really appreciate that point, Ryan, because it's made me think of like you as the COO of Social Engineer. We don't ever roll anything out without Ryan talking to the company about it. Right. So we install this new thing that people can put their email, their work email on their personal phones. But he says, here's the power it gives us. We can lock that down. We can erase the email if we need to, but we can't see anything on your phone. Right. It's not like, surprise, by the way, we can look at all your pictures. He sat down and explained to the whole company, if you choose to install this. And listening to what you were saying, I did the same thing in my family, right? When Amaya was younger and I wanted to put monitoring software on her phone, I showed her the software. I said, here's the name. You can look it up and read about it. You can watch me install it. You can be right there while I'm doing it. So you see that I'm not doing anything I didn't tell you I wasn't going to do. And she hated every second of it, but that also let her trust me, is that I said I was going to do this. I did it, and I did nothing else beyond that. And it wasn't like she went, yay, my dad's awesome. She still hated it, and she complained and told me none of her friends have this. And I'm like, I'm sorry their parents stink, but that's, I'm sorry that I love you more than their parents love them, but that's okay, That's
sure, that went over great.
That went over great. I won Dad of the Year award that year, by the way. Good. All of her friends voted for me, and no, that did not happen.
Got the fresh mug.
Yeah, got the mug that I bought myself at Walmart, But no, at the end of the day, I look back at those things and I say, I feel like that's the right way of handling it, because there was no surprises to her. It wasn't, I had to sit there and go, hey, by the way, I know that you were having this weird conversation because I stealthily installed something on your computer and I was monitoring you and ruining all of your privacy. Like, there's no way to bounce back from that.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't be like, hey, and by the way, there's also hidden cameras all over the house. Like, you just can't, there's no, there's nobody feels good about that. So that piece of advice is really valuable.
Well, you put your finger on a really important piece of this puzzle, and that is, you're going to have, life is hard out there. and you're going to have hard conversations. So do you want to have the conversation now, which is not uncomfortable but not necessarily hard, or do you want to have it later when it's really hard and really difficult? I always, you kill the dragon when it's a baby. Yeah, it's cute, but you don't let it grow up and then become a big, huge problem.
So before I get to some final questions, can you just give us some of the stats? Like where are we at with cases? Tell us about the organization. Tell us about where we are with ILF right now.
So right now, our team count is between 40. We are continuously between 40 and 55 on our team count is That's where awesome. We stay. We allow people. This is a very, very stressful position to volunteer for. And there's a lot of things that you're going to hear and you're never going to unhear it. And so we allow people to pause, take a break, take a couple months off, come back when you're rejuvenated, ready to go. So typically we are somewhere right at the 45 to 50 mark. But anywhere between 40 and 55 is our sweet spot for members of the team. Now, in the pit, the predator identification team, the people who are out there really doing the ugly, ugly work, we maintain that between 20 and 30. Right now we're at 20, and we have another 3 people who are about to be onboarded with that. And again, that is really stressful. That's where you're really just in the weeds with the ugly. We are at 625 total cases worked in our lifetime. So we're about, can you believe that?
I can't. No, I really can't. I mean, that's over 120 a year.
Yeah. We've not even hit our 5-year anniversary mark. That's coming up in just a couple of months. So 625 cases we've worked. Now, of those, 449 have been accepted by law enforcement, where they've been able to turn around and go, yeah, you guys nailed it. We're taking this case on. Now, leave it in our hands. We're going to go do our thing. And that's really the one that I love, because there's 449 folks that weren't on anyone's radar if it wasn't for the ILF. And now something's being done. Check out this. 65 current active cases. So we've got 20, soon to be 23 people in the pit, and we got 65 active cases sitting there that we are scrambling on working. So those are the current stats for us.
That's it's amazing, really. It's kind of like my brain loses words when I hear these things, because I never in my life expected to have it be that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's just amazing.
Our first year we did 9 cases.
Right.
And I was like, okay, that's pretty awesome. That's about the time that I came in. The year after that we did 86 cases. The year after that, 156 cases. Last year was 168. We're tracking at 22 completed, and with the current caseload, 51 this year, and with the current caseload, that's going to bring us up to about 116. So we're right on par with where we were for the previous years, and that seems to be between the 160 to 200 cases. It really seems to be our sweet spot, being able to get those accepted.
Yeah, nice. Those are great. Thank you for sharing them. One of the things we like to ask, because you had a different path into the security world than most.
Yep.
And we like to find out, who you would consider a mentor. It doesn't have to even be about security. It could just be in your life, in your career. Is there a person or two that you think is just, without them, you wouldn't be where you are today?
There is. And I actually, because I was only thinking business. And when I was only thinking business, I just really couldn't wrap in my head some of the experiences that I had in business were people who I learned, they mentored me by watching them fail over and over and over. And I learned what not to do. But that's really not the intent of what we're looking for, right?
No.
So I had to broaden
Let's not say that person's name. So thank you for failing so much.
Thank
Joe.
you for I learned so much from your failures.
Yeah.
That's legitimate though. I mean, that's where
it is, but we don't want to name them.
No. So I was thinking about that question, and actually, it's my wife. She has been my biggest mentor in life. I am the person I am today because of her. And so that was, I had to think about it, but once I thought about it, I was like, it was really an obvious answer for me.
That's awesome. Man, I think that may be the first time we've had that answer on this podcast. So not only is that heartwarming, but it's a unique answer. We haven't had that before.
It's very true.
Yeah,
very true.
Really nice. Thank you. Okay. As you know, from listening to the podcast before, our listeners are avid readers. They love to read. So we've been collecting a list of books. It doesn't have anything to do with what we talked about. It could be completely different. But do you have a book or two that you just think, man, everyone really needs to take time out of their life and read this?
I do. On the professional development end, it is a book by a gentleman by the name of Tony Kern. And the book is Going Pro, The Deliberate Practice of Professionalism. That's the one.
Just happens to be sitting on my desk because you recommended it to me. So it just happens to be sitting on my desk.
The reason why I love that book is we go back to the widget discussion again. We all tend to run down these little rabbit holes of, I'm going to do this with my career, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to learn this next latest, greatest thing. Yet underlying all of that, all those widgets are built on top of the foundation of being a professional. And yet, in my opinion, professionalism is no longer taught. And so what does it truly mean to be a professional? How do you execute it? How do you measure it? How do you hold yourself to a higher standard? And how do you improve? And at that point, once you've got that foundation laid, and you're never going to get, you're never going to reach the top, right? Because we all can do better. But then you can set your widget on top of that, and that will help propel you to where you want to be in your career path.
That's a great book recommendation. You have another one?
I do. When it comes to self-improvement, I still love 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Stephen Covey. Yeah. That book is 20, maybe getting close to 30 years old now.
Oh, yeah. I think it's got to be.
Yeah.
30, yeah. Maybe more.
I just saw a couple of years ago, it was awarded again the best business book for the year.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And again, I love it. It's based on principles. The world keeps changing, but good principles don't. And so you can adapt and then and just change from there. And then when it comes to fiction, my favorite, hands down, is Neuromancer by William Gibson. I love that book. I love the entire series. There's 3 of those in that series, but that book in particular, it's actually where the word cyberspace comes from. He was the first one to coin it. Yeah.
Wow, look at that. There we are. So you gave us a professional book, you gave us a self-improvement book, and a sci-fi book.
Yeah. Wow. I love to read.
What's your favorite kids book?
My favorite kids book. Wow, it's been like 50-something years since I've read one of those, so I don't know, Ryan.
All right, that's fine. Just trying to round it out.
Yeah, that was good.
Round 4 book number.
Yeah. Shane, no, I can't thank you enough. Thank you. I looked at the time and I realized we went longer than we normally do on this podcast because it's easy to talk to you, as always. Yeah. And you gave some really great actionable tips. So for any of you listening, I encourage people, even out of InfoSec, to their parents, grandparents that have to deal with kids, to listen to this podcast, to get some good tips, and to check out the InnocentLivesFoundation.org website to really get some of these tips and tricks to help with being more secure, especially as we enter the summer months with kids. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Ryan, both for helping out on this podcast. It was a great episode. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us today. Next month, we'll be joined by Jonathan Uni Oh boy, that's going to be a crazy one. He's the CISO of Ramsey Quantitative Systems, and he'll be on the Security Awareness series with us. And if you haven't heard that name before, be ready. That guy's got a sense of humor that I think there'll be a lot of laughs on that podcast, but it will learn a lot too. So until next month, stay safe. We'll see you.